Hey there, I'm Jillian, and I want to share something with you that's been weighing on my heart. It all started on my birthday, when my family humiliated me in front of everyone. But that wasn't the worst part. A week later, I uncovered their lies, and the truth was even darker than I ever imagined. Why would a family do that to their own? How could the people I trusted most betray me like this? Have you ever felt like your own family was hiding something from you? Drop a comment below. I really want to know where you're watching from, and if this hits home for you. The cake had barely settled on the table before the room felt like it was closing in on me. Every eye in the room was focused on the pink monstrosity placed before me. My heart sank. The custom two-tier cake that I had spent weeks planning for was nowhere to be seen. Instead, what sat before me was an unforgivably cheap-looking single-tiered cake topped with garish pink icing. The words, "Happy Birthday, the biggest disappointment in the family," were scrawled across it in bold, mocking letters. Laughter rang out, but it felt like a distant echo. I was paralyzed, unable to process what I was seeing. The world around me, once full of promise and expectation, now seemed like it was falling apart. "Isn't it perfect, Jillian?" My sister Lana's voice cut through the laughter. I could hear her smirking, her words dripping with false sweetness. I wanted to scream, to throw the cake across the room, but I couldn't move. The humiliation was suffocating. All the years of love I thought I had earned, of sacrifices I had made for this family, seemed to evaporate in an instant. My thoughts were racing. How could they do this? Why now on my birthday? I had carefully planned this day, believing that this would be the one time my family would come together, acknowledge me, and maybe, just maybe, show me some respect. Instead, they had turned it into a cruel joke at my expense. I felt something inside of me shift. The anger started small, but grew like a wildfire. I had spent so many years trying to keep the peace, trying to make them see me as more than just the disappointment, the quiet one they could manipulate. But this was too much. This was where I drew the line. But before I could say a word, my mother, who had been sitting silently in the corner, suddenly spoke up. "Come on, Jillian, it's just a joke. Don't be so sensitive." Her words felt like a slap to the face. The same woman who had raised me with conditional love, who had used my pain as a tool to manipulate me, was now dismissing me as if I were nothing. As I stared at her, I could feel the years of bottled-up resentment flooding my mind. Was I always going to be the joke? The one who wasn't enough for them? I turned to look at my father, hoping, praying for a hint of support. But his eyes were downcast, his silence a deafening betrayal. Had he ever truly cared? Or was he just another bystander to my pain? I stood up abruptly, the chair scraping loudly against the wooden floor. "I've had enough," I muttered under my breath, more to myself than anyone else. My legs shook as I walked towards the door, my chest tight, my breath coming in shallow gasps. "Where are you going?" Lana's voice, sharp with mockery, reached me just as I reached the door. I didn't stop. Enough was enough. 16 years ago, I was sitting at this same dining table. Only back then, it wasn't a birthday celebration. It was just another ordinary meal where I was ignored, dismissed, and left to fend for myself in the cold silence of my family's apathy. How many birthdays had I sat through, hoping for a moment of recognition, only to be crushed by their indifference? I pushed the memory aside as I stepped out into the cold night air, the door slamming behind me with a force that sent a shiver down my spine. I could still hear the laughter, the mocking tones echoing in my ears, but I refused to let them chase me. Out here, away from the cruelty of the house, I finally allowed myself to breathe. The weight that had settled on my chest for years had started to lift. It wasn't freedom yet, but it was the first step. I would not let this be my story. I would not let them define me. I would fight. I didn't stay long at the restaurant after the cake incident. I couldn't. The weight of the humiliation felt like it was pressing on my chest, suffocating me with every breath. I ended up driving around aimlessly for what felt like hours, trying to clear my head. But nothing worked. The laughter still echoed in my mind, a reminder of just how little I meant to them. I parked my car by the lake, the calm waters reflecting the sky's soft pink hue as the sun began to set. It was supposed to be peaceful, but it only added to the ache in my chest. I thought about everything, how I'd let myself believe that maybe this year, things could be different. How I had imagined the family coming together, even if just for a moment, to celebrate me. Instead, I was nothing more than a punchline in their cruel joke. My mind kept replaying the words on that cake, the cruel words written for everyone to see. The biggest disappointment in the family. I couldn't escape it. It stung more than any insult ever had. I had always thought of myself as the quiet one, the one who kept the peace, who took the hits and kept going. But now, after everything, I felt more than disappointed. I was angry, furious even. I leaned back against the seat, closing my eyes, and let the memories flood in. The subtle manipulations, the way my mother would tell me I wasn't doing enough, that I wasn't good enough. Her voice would soften with an almost loving tone as she made me feel like I was always lacking, always on the edge of not measuring up. Her disappointment in me was always so much louder than her praise. And then there was Lana, always so perfect in their eyes, the golden child. It wasn't just the birthday, though. There had been so many moments where I had felt invisible, overshadowed by her achievements, her looks, her everything. It wasn't enough to just be part of the family. I had to prove myself every single day. And somehow, even after all my efforts, I still failed. I sighed and opened my eyes, glancing out at the water. How had I let it go on for so long? A rustling sound from the back seat caught my attention. I glanced over and saw an envelope sticking out from under the seat. The financial records, the ones I had hidden away years ago, the ones that I had shoved out of sight in a desperate attempt to forget about them. I pulled them out, my fingers trembling as I flipped through the papers. It didn't take long before I found what I was looking for. The receipts and transactions that detailed how much I had been taken advantage of over the years. There were charges for things I never bought, loans I never took out, and payments I didn't remember making. The numbers on those papers were like a slap in the face, a brutal reminder of the manipulation I had endured. The truth had always been there, right under my nose, but I had buried it. I had buried it because confronting it would have meant facing the fact that my family, the people who were supposed to love and support me, had used me. They had used my trust, my hard work, my loyalty, and they had exploited it for their own gain. And then I heard her voice. "Jillian!" My mother's voice came from behind me, tentative and unsure. I froze, the papers still in my hands. Slowly, I turned around to see her standing by the door of my car. There was no anger in her expression, only guilt, a guilt I had never seen in her before. It was almost as if she had been caught red-handed. I found something," she said, her voice soft. "The papers, the ones you've been hiding." I couldn't speak. Part of me wanted to yell, to demand an explanation. But another part of me, the part that had spent so many years trying to please her, trying to make her proud, just wanted to break down and cry. "I didn't know." Her words trailed off, and she stepped closer, her eyes on the papers in my hands. "Jillian, I never knew. I never realized." I let the silence hang in the air. For a moment, I wasn't sure if I wanted to hear her apology. I had spent years hoping for one, but now that it was here, it felt empty. "I didn't want this for you," she continued, her voice cracking. I didn't know how much I had hurt you." I stared at her, the emotions inside me swirling like a storm. Part of me wanted to forgive her, to let it go. But another part of me, the part that had been broken by years of neglect, knew I couldn't just sweep this under the rug. Not anymore. "I've had enough, Mom," I said, the words leaving my lips before I could stop them. My voice was stronger than I expected, steady despite the fury and pain inside me. "I can't keep pretending that everything's fine. I can't keep pretending that you didn't hurt me." Her face fell, and for a moment, I thought she might apologize, finally acknowledge the pain she had caused. But instead, she opened her mouth to speak, only to be interrupted by the sharp ring of my phone. I glanced down and saw Riley's name on the screen. Riley, the family friend who had been a part of my life for years. I hesitated, but then answered. "Jillian," Riley's voice was urgent, almost frantic. I need to tell you something important. You need to hear this. My heart skipped a beat. What could it be? Why did it feel like the ground was shifting beneath me again? I turned away from my mother, my mind racing with questions. What is it, Riley? I asked, my voice tight with both fear and curiosity. Something about your family? He said, his voice lower now, almost conspiratorial. Something you need to know. I don't think you realize just how deep this goes. My pulse quickened, and for the first time in years, I felt like I was standing on the edge of something much bigger than I had ever imagined. I had always known there were cracks in my family's foundation, but now I was about to learn just how deep those cracks really went. It had been days since the humiliation at the birthday dinner, but the weight of it still sat heavy on my chest. I kept replaying the scene over and over, each time feeling the sting all over again. My family's laughter echoed in my mind, and I could still see the mocking smile on Lana's face. How had I let them get away with it for so long? I walked through the empty house, the silence filling the space. My eyes landed on the family photos on the wall, snapshots of moments where I was supposed to feel loved, accepted. Yet every single picture felt like a lie. I had always been the one who kept the peace, the one who never spoke up, the one who let the insults slide as if they didn't matter. But they did matter. They had mattered all along. My hands clenched into fists as the anger began to rise within me. I had lived my life tiptoeing around my family's expectations, trying to please them, trying to keep everyone happy. But they had never bothered to do the same for me. All those years of emotional manipulation, the subtle jabs, the quiet control, I was done. I could feel the heat of tears threatening to spill, but I refused to let them fall. I wasn't going to cry anymore. No, I was going to stand up for myself. I was going to speak the words that had been trapped in my throat for far too long. I picked up my phone and dialed my mother's number. It rang once, then twice, before she picked up. Jillian? Her voice was soft, almost hesitant. What is it? I stared at the wall, my breath steadying. We need to talk. There was a pause, a shift in the air. What about? I inhaled deeply. About everything. About how you've treated me. About the way you've used me. And how you've allowed me to suffer in silence for so long. I heard her breath catch on the other end. Jillian, I didn't mean to. No, you didn't mean to. I interrupted, the anger bubbling up. But that's the problem. You never meant to. You never meant to care. You used me, Mom, and I let you. But not anymore. I could feel the tears that I had been holding back, but I refused to let them show. Not now. Not when I had just found my voice. I didn't mean to hurt you, she said softly, but her words felt empty. I thought I was doing what was best for you. Best for me? I scoffed, pacing the room. Telling me I'm not good enough every single day? Making me feel like I'm a failure? That's what's best for me? I didn't know it was hurting you like that, she said, her voice trembling. Of course you didn't, I snapped, the bitterness spilling out. You were too busy controlling everything, too busy making sure Lana was perfect, and I was just there, invisible. I could feel the air between us thicken with the truth, the rawness of it hanging heavy. But I wasn't finished, not yet. You made me feel like I wasn't worth anything, like everything I did wasn't enough, and now after all these years I'm supposed to just forgive you? No, I can't do that anymore. I'm done being your punching bag. There was silence on the other end of the line. I waited for her to say something, anything, but the silence only deepened. Jillian, she finally whispered, I never meant to make you feel like that, but I don't know how to fix it. I don't know how to make it right. Maybe you should have thought about that before you let me down every single time, I said, my voice steady but filled with a pain that I couldn't hide anymore. I've been holding this family together for years, and you don't even see me. You never did. I hung up before she could say anything more. The ringing silence in the room felt deafening, but it was also oddly freeing. I had said it. I had finally told her everything. But just as I was about to put my phone down, it rang again. The caller ID read, Riley. I hesitated. Riley had been a part of my life for as long as I could remember. He was a family friend, someone I had trusted. but his presence had always felt like an echo in the background of my life. And now, after everything that had happened, I wasn't sure where he stood anymore. I answered the call. "Riley?" "Jillian," he said, his voice strained. "I need to talk to you. It's important." "What is it?" I asked, my heart picking up speed. "I know about everything. What your family's been doing to you," he said, his voice low. I knew for a long time, but I didn't say anything. I regret that. But now, there's something you need to hear. I sat up straighter. "What are you talking about?" "There's more, Jillian. Something about Lana. Something that could ruin everything for you," Riley said, his words making my pulse race. I froze. "What do you mean?" "I can't explain it all now, but I promise you, it's bigger than you think. You've been kept in the dark for a reason, and it's time you know the truth." The room seemed to close in around me. My family, the secrets, the lies, it all felt like it was crashing down at once. My mind raced, trying to piece together the fragments of what Riley was telling me. "I don't know if I'm ready for this," I whispered, feeling the weight of the unknown pressing down on me. "Just trust me," Riley urged. "I'll explain everything, but you need to know, it's not over yet. The truth is still out there, and it's going to change everything." The line went silent, and I sat there, staring at the phone, my heart pounding. What had I gotten myself into? And more importantly, what was I about to uncover? The weight of the past few weeks settled heavily on my shoulders. The betrayal at my birthday still felt raw, and now, it seemed that more secrets were coming to light. I had thought the worst was behind me, but with each revelation, it felt like my world was being pulled apart more and more. I spent most of the morning in my room, pacing. My thoughts were racing, and the anger that had been simmering inside me was about to boil over. The shocking truth about my sister Lana was now impossible to ignore. How had I never seen it before? How could I have been so blind? Lana had been taking my ideas for years, things I had poured my heart and soul into. She had presented them as her own, gaining recognition and leaving me in the shadows. I had always believed in her, supported her, and protected her from everything. But all along, she had been using me as a stepping stone to climb higher. The betrayal hit me like a sucker punch to the gut. I couldn't breathe. I couldn't think straight. The very sister I had loved and cared for had turned her back on me. And for what? For selfish gain. It was as if the walls were closing in around me. I needed to get to the bottom of this. I couldn't let this go any longer. I couldn't let Lana get away with it. My mind raced back to the moment Riley had called me. The voice on the other end had been hesitant at first, but when he spoke, his words dropped like bombs in my ears. It wasn't just Lana. It was more. There was a bigger picture, something much darker, something that could destroy everything I thought I knew about my family. I had never felt so betrayed in my life. I needed to confront her. I had to. I was tired of living in the dark, tired of being the one who stayed silent. I was done. I grabbed my phone and texted Lana, demanding she meet me at the cafe where we used to go as kids, a place that held so many memories, both good and bad. I hated the idea of confronting her there, but I didn't care anymore. I needed answers. When I arrived at the cafe, I sat at a corner booth, my fingers tapping nervously against the table. My mind kept spinning with every possibility, every lie I might uncover. Then she walked in, Lana. Her face was as cold as ever, but I could see the flicker of guilt in her eyes. She knew. She knew this was coming. I didn't wait for her to speak. I couldn't. My voice was sharp, cutting through the silence between us. "I know what you've been doing, Lana. I know you've been stealing my ideas and passing them off as your own." Lana's eyes widened for a split second before she quickly masked it with a smirk. "What are you talking about? You're just upset because you've always been the one to hold back. You've never really believed in yourself. I just helped you, that's all." The words hit me like daggers. Helped me? Is that what you call it? Taking everything I've worked for and presenting it like it's yours? How long has this been going on, Lana? How many times have you done this to me? She leaned back, trying to appear nonchalant, but the tension was thick. "I didn't think it would matter. It's not like you were ever going to do anything with those ideas anyway." The words left my mouth before I could stop them. You never cared about me, did you? You just saw me as a tool to get ahead. Lana didn't reply, but the silence between us spoke louder than anything she could have said. I could feel the betrayal seeping into every corner of the room, suffocating me. I stood up, my hands trembling, but my resolve stronger than ever. I'm done, Lana. I'm done with you, with all of it. But before I could leave, she spoke again, her voice quieter this time. Jill, you don't know everything. There's more. There's something bigger going on in this family, something that could ruin you. I froze. What do you mean? Her lips parted, and for the first time I saw a flicker of something that wasn't anger or defensiveness. I can't say much right now, but you're not the only one who's been kept in the dark. And trust me, if this comes out, it could destroy everything. My heart pounded in my chest, my breath quickening. What are you talking about, Lana? What could possibly be worse than what you've already done? I can't say anymore, she said, her voice barely above a whisper. But you need to find out, before it's too late. I stared at her, feeling the weight of her words pressing down on me. I had no idea what kind of mess I was walking into, but I knew one thing for sure. Everything was about to change. The silence in the house was suffocating. I had spent the entire day going over the details in my mind, rehearsing what I was going to say. But when it came down to it, nothing could prepare me for what I was about to face. I had lived my whole life under their control, my parents, my sister, and I had always kept quiet. Always let the manipulation and the lies slide. But not anymore. I was done. The discovery that they had been using me as a scapegoat for their failures, pinning every mistake and misfortune on me, weighed heavily on my chest. It felt like all the years of sacrifice and silence were leading up to this very moment. My parents had exploited me, both emotionally and financially, and I could no longer ignore the truth. They had always pushed me into the shadows, making me carry their burdens. And now, I was done being their punching bag. I walked into the living room, my heart pounding with a mix of rage and determination. My parents were sitting on the couch, talking in low voices. When they saw me, they both stiffened. I could feel the tension in the air, thick and palpable. I need to talk to you both, I said, my voice steady but laced with the anger I had been holding in for years. They exchanged a glance, but neither of them said a word. I sat down in front of them, looking directly into their eyes. I know what you've been doing, I said. I know how you've used me, how you've manipulated me for years. My mother's face twitched slightly, but she quickly masked it with a blank expression. What are you talking about, Jillian? You're upset, and we understand that, but… No, I interrupted, shaking my head. I'm done with your excuses. You've been using me as a scapegoat for everything that's gone wrong in this family. All the financial mess, all the mistakes. You've made me carry it, and you've done it for years. My father shifted uncomfortably, but he didn't say anything. I could see the guilt in their eyes, but it wasn't enough to stop them from defending themselves. Jillian, we've done what we thought was best for you. You just don't understand, my mother began, her voice rising defensively. No, I said again, standing up, my fists clenched at my sides. You've used me, and I've let you. But not anymore. I'm done playing this part. I'm not your victim. Not anymore. The room was silent, save for the sound of my breathing, deep and controlled. My parents didn't seem to know what to say. The truth hung in the air, thick and suffocating. I could feel the weight of the years of abuse, the manipulation and the lies. All of it was crashing down on me. But I wasn't going to let them silence me anymore. Not when I had finally found my voice. You've ruined me, I continued, my voice trembling with a mix of anger and sadness. I've given you everything and you've taken it. You've taken me, and now I'm done. I'm walking away. I don't care what you think anymore. For a moment, they just stared at me, both of them at a loss for words. It was almost as if they couldn't comprehend that their daughter, the one they had controlled for so long, was finally standing up to them. But then my father spoke, his voice low and measured. You don't know everything, Jillian. You've only scratched the surface. His words were a slap in the face. It felt like a punch to my gut. What do you mean? I asked, my voice faltering for the first time. "What are you talking about?" He didn't answer. Instead, he just looked at me, his eyes cold and distant. I could see the years of lies in his gaze, and I knew he wasn't going to tell me anything. Not now, not ever. I stood there, my heart racing, trying to process what he had just said. My mind was reeling. What else was there? What else could they be hiding? How deep did this go? I turned and walked out of the room, my legs shaky beneath me. I had come here to confront them, to break free, but now I was more uncertain than ever. The weight of the truth had been laid bare, but there were still more secrets, more lies, and the more I uncovered, the more I realized that I might never get the closure I was hoping for. The war wasn't over, it had only just begun. I had spent the night staring at the ceiling, the weight of the past few days pressing down on me. Confronting my parents had been a monumental step, but it hadn't given me the closure I was seeking. If anything, it had only opened a floodgate of new questions. What else had they hidden from me? What else had been twisted into lies? I couldn't shake the feeling that I was missing something. I needed to know. I had to uncover everything. So I started digging through old family documents, papers, files, even letters I hadn't looked at in years. I rifled through them with a sense of desperation, and then there it was. It was a series of financial records from years ago. As I went through them, the magnitude of what I was seeing slowly began to hit me. My parents had been using me as a pawn, manipulating me financially and emotionally. The records showed that they'd set up accounts in my name, used my credit to cover their debts, and made sure I'd never have enough to live on my own. All of this had been kept from me. I was a tool to them, and I had no idea until now. The betrayal was gut-wrenching. Every memory of my family I had ever cherished suddenly felt hollow. They had built their world on my shoulders, all while I was kept in the dark. I sat back, the papers scattered in front of me, my hands trembling, and then I found something else, an old videotape buried deep in a box labeled Family Memories. My heart skipped a beat. I didn't know what was on that tape, but I had to know. I found the old VCR and popped the tape in, my fingers slick with sweat. The screen flickered to life, showing a family gathering from years ago. At first, it was just the usual, laughter, smiles, the kind of home video everyone keeps tucked away. But then it changed. The camera zoomed in on a conversation I had never heard, one that I had never been meant to hear. It was my parents whispering in hushed voices. The words that followed were chilling. They weren't just discussing family finances or helping me. No, they were talking about how they'd been manipulating me for years. How they'd planted seeds of doubt in my mind, set me up to fail so they could step in and take control. I saw them laugh at their own cunning, how they'd carefully crafted a narrative that had kept me dependent on them. My stomach churned. I felt as though the ground had been pulled out from under me. And there was more. My sister Lana was involved. She had known everything, every lie, every plan. It was as though she had been a silent accomplice, feeding me false hopes while profiting from my misfortune. The betrayal cut deeper than I ever imagined. As the video continued, I saw snippets of private conversations between my parents, discussing how to manipulate me further, how they'd convinced me that I was the one in the wrong, that I owed them everything. My entire life had been a lie. I stopped the video. My chest was tight, and my breath came in short, sharp gasps. The weight of it all crashed down on me. Anger, disbelief, and a deep, painful sadness flooded my body. I had trusted them. These were the people I had called family, and they had used me as their pawn. I needed to act. I couldn't let this go. I was done being manipulated. I was done being the victim of their lies. I sat there for a while, staring at the video. It was the final proof I needed, the one thing I could take to show the world what had been happening behind closed doors. The evidence was clear. But before I could even begin to process what my next steps would be, my phone rang. I stared at the screen. It was my father. I hesitated, but I answered. "You don't know what you've just done, Jillian," he said, his voice frantic, shaky. "If you go public with this, you'll regret it." His words were a punch to the gut. I didn't know what to think. What else had he been hiding? What could they possibly have left to protect? I didn't say anything. I just hung up. My hands were shaking as I stared at the phone, wondering what my next move should be. I had the evidence. But something in my father's voice, the desperation, the fear, told me that this battle was far from over. What else had they done? How deep did the lies go? I took a deep breath, my resolve solidifying. I wasn't going to back down. I couldn't. But as I prepared to send the video to my lawyer, I couldn't shake the nagging feeling that this was just the beginning. I had already lost so much, but now it was time to take the next step. This was no longer about family drama or private disputes. It was about fighting for justice. The weight of everything I'd uncovered, the lies, the manipulation, the emotional and financial shackles, they had to be exposed. But doing this would tear apart the last fragile threads I had with my family. It would change everything. My lawyer had just emailed me the draft of the lawsuit, and I sat there, staring at it, my heart pounding in my chest. The fear was overwhelming, but there was no going back now. I was about to drag my family's dark secrets into the light, and nothing would ever be the same again. As I read through the legal jargon, a flood of emotions washed over me. There was a growing sense of empowerment in my chest, yes, but it was also mixed with a cold knot of fear. My family would try to discredit me. They would twist the truth. They would say I was bitter, angry, or exaggerating. They would say anything to keep their facade intact. But the truth was undeniable. I wasn't scared of them anymore. I was scared of the world's reaction. What if people sided with them? What if they thought I was the villain in all of this? The public would judge me. There was no escaping that. Going public meant opening myself up to scrutiny, gossip, and whispers behind closed doors. But my desire to find justice for the years of abuse I endured was stronger than any fear of judgment. I was ready to expose everything, every manipulative tactic, every lie. I hired the lawyer, I signed the papers, and I sent them off. A heavy weight lifted off my shoulders, but it was replaced by a storm of emotions, determination, but also a raw, aching anxiety. The next day, the calls began. Family members started reaching out. I had already cut ties with most of them, but now they were finding their way back into my life, under the guise of concern. But I knew better. Aunt Rachel left a voicemail, sounding too sweet, asking how I was. Uncle Ted texted me, telling me we needed to talk. It was all the same, a game of manipulation disguised as care. They were already trying to silence me, convince me to retract, to keep the family image intact. I didn't respond. Then came the text that would change everything. Riley. I hadn't spoken to him in months, not since the confrontation with Lana, not since everything began unraveling. But now there he was, his name lighting up my phone screen. I took a deep breath before answering. Jill, I've got something. You need to know. I sat up straighter, my pulse racing. Riley had been in the loop the entire time, knew about the toxic web my family had spun around me. He could be my ally, or he could be another manipulator. But I had to hear him out. I've got information. It's big, Jillian. Something that could change everything. But if you use it, there's no going back. The whole family will implode. The words hit me like a punch to the gut. The weight of them settled over me, suffocating me for a moment. What are you talking about, Riley? I whispered, my voice trembling. You're about to destroy them, but there's more you don't know. More that can hurt everyone. This might be bigger than you think. The blood drained from my face. I wasn't just fighting for my own peace anymore. I was on the edge of something much darker, much deeper than I had imagined. The implications of his words could be catastrophic. But could I turn back now? Could I go back to the silence, to the quiet suffocation that had kept me in place for so long? I wasn't sure what to do with the information Riley had just dropped in my lap. If I pushed forward, there was no coming back from this. Everything I had built, my career, my future, could come crashing down with one misstep. But then again, what kind of life would I be living if I didn't fight for myself now? I sat there in my apartment, the phone still in my hand, torn between the desire to end this fight for good and the cold fear that Riley's warning wasn't just a threat. It was a reality I wasn't sure I could survive. And then, just as I thought I might collapse under the weight of it all, my phone rang again. It was my father. You don't know what you've done, Jillian. he said, his voice low, tense. "If you go public with this, you'll regret it. You think you're fighting for justice, but you're walking into a nightmare." I could almost feel the icy chill in his voice, a cold reminder of the control they had once held over me. But now, with every secret I uncovered, every lie I exposed, I was taking back the control I had lost for so long. The fight wasn't over yet. In fact, it had only just begun. I had spent so long preparing for this moment. I had confronted my family, dug into every hidden corner of our past, and uncovered truths that I never wanted to know. Now it was time to face my mother, the one who had been at the center of it all, the woman I once thought of as the strongest, most unshakable figure in my life. Today, I was going to tear down the walls she had built around herself. Today, I would finally stand up for the girl she had broken so many years ago. The air between us was thick with tension. I could feel the heat rising in my chest, the anger that had been building for so long finally bubbling to the surface. My heart pounded in my ears as I walked into the living room. My mother sat on the couch, her eyes darting toward me with a mixture of guilt and defensiveness. "I know what you've done," I said, my voice steady, but my hands clenched at my sides. "The lies, the manipulation, the way you've used me for years. I'm done pretending I don't see it." She didn't answer right away. The silence between us stretched like smoke, thick and suffocating. I could see her eyes flicker with something, maybe shame, maybe fear, but she didn't speak. "You've controlled every part of my life," I continued, taking a step forward. "You made me your scapegoat for everything. All those times I felt like I was drowning, wondering why nothing I did was ever enough. It was you. You were the one pulling the strings. I've been living under your shadow for far too long." My mother's face twisted, a flash of something dark crossing her features. For the first time in my life, I saw her crack. The facade of control she had held so tightly onto for so many years seemed to crumble in that one moment. "You don't understand," she finally said, her voice quieter now, almost pleading. "I did what I had to do. I thought I was protecting you. I thought it was the only way to keep you safe." "Safe?" I scoffed, the bitterness in my voice palpable. "You kept me safe by trapping me, by making me feel like I wasn't good enough. You destroyed my sense of self-worth, and for what? So you could look good? So you could hide your mistakes behind me?" I could feel my heart racing, the anger bubbling up inside me like a volcano ready to erupt. I had spent so many years trying to be the good daughter, trying to make my mother proud, but all I had done was feed into her manipulation. And then, just when I thought I was about to break, someone else stepped in. "Lana," I said, my voice trembling, "what do you have to say about all of this?" Lana, my sister, had been silent up until that point, sitting in the corner of the room with her arms crossed. But now, she spoke, her words sending a chill through my spine. "You think it's just Mom, don't you?" Lana's voice was cold, distant. "You think she's the only one who's been playing you? You're wrong. Mom might be the root, but she's not the only one pulling the strings." I froze, her words sinking in. What was she talking about? What else had I not seen? "Lana, what the hell are you talking about?" I demanded. "You need to know the whole truth, Jillian," she said, her gaze hardening. "It's not just Mom. It's all of us. We've all been part of it, in our own way. We've all used you, manipulated you for our own gain." I stumbled back, the world around me spinning. This was a nightmare. My sister, the person I had always thought of as my ally, had been just as much a part of the web of deceit as everyone else. "I didn't want to tell you," Lana continued, "but you deserve to know. Mom's not the only one who has hurt you. And I'm sorry for that. I really am." I could feel the ground beneath me shift, the earth crumbling beneath my feet. The betrayal I had felt before, toward my mother, toward my family, had just multiplied tenfold. And then, as if this wasn't enough to shatter me, a new voice spoke up. "Jillian," my father said, his voice cutting through the room, "you think you know everything, but you don't." I looked at him, heart racing. "What now, Dad?" I whispered, barely able to breathe. "You've only scratched the surface," he said, his eyes cold and distant. "There's more you don't know, more you can't even begin to understand. If you continue with this, everything is going to explode. You think you're in control? You're not. You're just digging yourself deeper." My mind reeled. This was it. This was the moment where everything I thought I knew about my family was thrown into chaos. The stakes were higher than ever, and the consequences of what I had just uncovered were unimaginable. I felt like I was standing at the edge of a precipice, staring into an abyss. What did I do now? Could I go back? Could I ever fix what had been broken? For the first time in my life, I wasn't sure. But one thing was clear. I couldn't walk away. Not now. Not after everything I had uncovered. I had a choice to make, and there was no turning back. The moment had arrived. After weeks of digging through the wreckage of my family's lies and deceit, I stood on the edge, ready to expose every dark secret they had kept hidden for so long. My heart pounded in my chest as I prepared to take the final step, knowing that this would change everything. I stood at the place where it all began, the night of my birthday, the cruel joke, the lies, the betrayal. It all started there, and now it would end. I had spent so much time trying to hold on to the hope that something in my family was worth saving. But the truth was undeniable. My family was broken, and it was time for them to face the consequences of their actions. I took a deep breath, steadying myself. I was no longer afraid. I was no longer the quiet, compliant daughter they had manipulated. I had the power now. "Here it is," I said, my voice cutting through the heavy silence. I held up the document I had uncovered, the financial records that detailed the extent of my family's lies. The papers trembled slightly in my hands, but I stood tall. "This is the truth you've been hiding. The financial deals, the manipulation, the years of deceit. I've seen it all now, and it's time for the world to know." The room was silent. No one spoke, no one moved. The weight of the truth hung in the air, thick and suffocating. My mother, who had always prided herself on her control, looked at me with wide eyes. She had no words. She couldn't deny it anymore. I dropped the bombshell after bombshell, the manipulations, the lies, the emotional abuse. Every word I spoke was a piece of the puzzle I had spent years trying to put together. And as I revealed each piece, the room seemed to shrink around me. But that wasn't the end. No, there was more. There was always more. "And this," I continued, pulling out another document, "this is what you tried to bury. You tried to hide everything about the family's financial dealings, your dirty secrets, the money you stole, the way you used me to cover it all up." My mother flinched, her face pale, but she didn't speak. She couldn't. Then the final shock came. A family friend, someone I had trusted, stepped forward. He had been there for the worst of it, and now he couldn't stay silent any longer. He reached into his pocket and pulled out a file that would change everything. "I have something to add," he said, his voice shaking. "I've been sitting on this for years. You need to know everything, not just about your mother's actions, but the entire family's involvement. Jillian, you've been the scapegoat, but the truth is much darker than you realize." I took the file from him, my hands trembling as I opened it. Inside were documents, photos, and reports. The truth about my family's deep involvement in fraudulent activities, using me as the fall guy to cover their tracks. My heart sank into my stomach. I looked at my mother, and for the first time, I saw her weakness. She couldn't deny it anymore. She couldn't hide behind her mask of control. But there was one more revelation, one more twist. As I stood there, holding the final piece of the puzzle, my father's voice broke through the silence. "You don't know everything, Jillian," he said, his voice a low growl. "You think this is it? You've only scratched the surface." I felt my breath catch in my throat. What did he mean? What else was there? My mind raced, trying to make sense of his words. "You think you've uncovered the worst of it," he continued, his eyes narrowing. "But there's more. You're just getting started. If you take this any further, you won't be able to turn back." His words sent a chill down my spine. He was threatening me, but I wasn't afraid anymore. I had already crossed the line. The damage was done. I stood there, the weight of the revelations heavy on my shoulders. My family's lies, their manipulation, their deceit, it was all out in the open now. And I was no longer their victim. The room was still. No one dared speak. I could feel the tension building, the pressure mounting, but I didn't flinch. I wasn't afraid anymore. I had the truth, and I wasn't going to let it go. But as I stood there, ready to make my final decision, my phone buzzed. A message, Riley. He had been silent for so long, but now he had reached out. I opened the message. Jillian, there's something you need to know, something that could change everything. My heart skipped a beat. What more could there possibly be? What did Riley know that I didn't? I looked up at my family, my gaze unwavering. The final unveiling had begun, and there was no going back. I had exposed their secrets, their lies, and now I had to face the consequences. Would I go public with everything, or would I let the storm pass? I didn't know the answer yet. But I did know one thing. This battle wasn't over. It had only just begun. As I reflect on everything that has happened, I've realized one important thing. The power to change our lives is always in our hands. Sometimes, the hardest battles are fought within our own families, with those we love most. But no matter how deep the betrayal, no matter how difficult the journey, we can always choose to stand up for ourselves. It's never easy, and it's never clear, but we always have a choice to break free from the chains that bind us. To everyone watching, remember that you deserve respect, love, and honesty. Never let anyone make you feel small or worthless, no matter their place in your life. Stand firm in who you are, and when the time comes, speak your truth. It might not be easy, but the power it brings is life-changing. I want to hear from you. Have you ever had to stand up to someone you love? How did you handle it? Drop your thoughts in the comments below. If you enjoyed this video and it resonated with you, please hit that subscribe button and share it with someone who needs to hear this. Let's continue this conversation. Let me know where you're watching from. And if you didn't enjoy the video, feel free to share your thoughts as well. Thank you for being a part of this journey, and stay strong.